Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Those of you who are joining us online here, we've got some students this morning. If you'd like to come in at 9:30 for our Torah study from now on, you're more than welcome to come. I can't get my hair right. I don't know why. I just can't. All right. I want to talk about Numbers a little bit. Part of Numbers, of course, has to do with the priesthood. But there's another topic that gets very little attention because there's not a lot of information. But it gives us an idea that things were not maybe as we supposed, right? Looking at it from an all-male priesthood, one sometimes misses what the Bible expressly says. So let's take a look at the first question. Okay, the first question is Numbers 8, verses 24 to 26. So this is what it says. This applies to the Levites. Men 25 years old or more shall come to take part in the work at the tent of meeting. But at the age of 50, they must retire from their regular service and work no longer. They may assist their brothers in performing their duties at the tent of meeting, but they themselves must not do the work. This is how you are to assign the responsibilities of the Levites, and then God regulates the priestly office. He limits the age from 25 to 50, right? Now, in fact, King David changes the Torah. In 1 Chronicles chapter 23, verse 27, we see a remarkable change as he changed even the way that they did business in the temple.
Chronicle where?
1 Chronicles 23, 27. Okay, people are very, very afraid of change. Most folks like to keep things exactly as they are. We see it in marriages. We see it in, siblings. We see it in friendships. We see it. Some people like the tables this way. Okay, they don't want it to change. Other people like it this way. So if we change it, we make a whole other group of people mad. Okay, and it's not always for logical reasons. It's kind of like I want it this way, right? Some people want the children to stay with the parents during the oneg, which is usually a good idea. Other people want the children to, eat in the children's room, and so we change things to befit what our needs are at any given time. And for me, change is not a scary thing. You change according to the need, whatever the need is. Okay, whatever's best for the people, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so but as I said, people are reticent to change. And here, King David thought it was okay and was not rebuked to change the age. Now, not from 25 to 50, but from age 20 to 50. Why do you think? What would be the reason to change it to a younger age? He didn't eliminate the top age, eliminates the younger age. It's because the temple is not the tabernacle. The temple is big, and we need more people to work in the temple.
That's the everlasting question. Change, continuity. Where we're going to keep the balance.
You can't violate either one too much. Somewhere has to.
Harmonize.
Yeah, you have to harmonize it. That exactly. So he doesn't change the upper limit. He changes the lower limit to have more people involved. So the Bible doesn't give a specific reason for the limitation of age, but the Hebrew men were eligible for military involvement at age 20. Okay, so King David has a reasonable age limit change, if they're eligible for military service, they should be eligible for the temple service. Okay? Makes a logical thing.
First Chronicles 26.
23, 27. All right.
23 chapter 2 to 27 chapter.
I'm just saying that in 1 Chronicles 23, 27, that's where King David changes the age.
I see.
Okay? And now, people, I don't know if people objected, but I can well imagine the priesthood, who were the guarders of the sacred text, would say, but the Torah says it's age 25. How can you change it? And his answer is, because I'm the king. Okay? And I can change it. And there's nothing wrong with the change. By the way, I'm going to change the temple service. I'm going to have virgins dancing, and I'm going to have the Kohathites lead the worship. Okay? They're not going to do menial work anymore. And by the way, the high priest is going to be through Zadok. Okay? There's too much argument about who's the high priest, and we don't want any of the far relatives of Hophni and Phinehas anymore, according to the prophecy, so we're going to change that. The high priest is going to be through Zadok. So David made a lot of changes. Okay? And I'm talking about changes to the Torah, which we feel is sacrosanct. And yet, the need for change was there. All right? 50 years, in the old days, people didn't live as long as we did. Moses is an exception. Okay? In the patriarchal period, people lived longer. But as time evolved, people lived 70 years. David, King David, 70 years old. The question is, why did Adam live 930 years instead of 1,000 years? Well, he gave 70 years to King David. It's just a Jewish legend. It doesn't mean any reality. But that's how I remember David's age, Okay, they didn't live as long as we lived. And so the shorter life span at that time, 50 was probably a reasonable retirement age. These days, my father retired at age 55. But these days, nobody's retiring unless you're in the military, I suppose. Age 55, people are now waiting till 70 to get the full Social Security. And they're going to raise the age. That's inevitable that they're going to raise the age because people are living well into their 90s, and medicine is better, everything is better. So the 50 is probably a reasonable amount. Now, the Torah does not say that they can't work to some degree. They can't do the work themselves, but they can assist, they can train, they can advise. And that's a reasonable role for older folks, is as the younger ones come in, they look to you for advice. I love, the fact that there are older people who know how to do something, and whether it's auto mechanics or electricity or whatever it might be, and the younger people can go to them, oh, by the way, do it this way. I know the book says do it this way, but I have found through experience, do it this way because blah, 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 blah. And so you learn these wonderful skills. Usually in the old world, you learned that from your father, right? Your father was a bricklayer. He taught you how to lay bricks, and you became a bricklayer. You had a living, and so forth and so on. So these priests are going to be advisors. They'll be mature enough to advise. They'll be able to advise. They're limited from the physical demands. Now, that being said, we come to another curious portion, okay? We now know that the Torah can be changed. I mean, the fundamentals, the Ten Commandments, are never going to be changed, right? But within the Torah, you have this structure, and you have the Torah. A Torah is something that's not going to be changed. It's never going to be okay to murder, okay? If an assassin comes in time of war, that's not murder, okay? Hey, shalom, everybody. But it's never going to be okay to profane the name of God. It's never going to be okay to build an idol and worship it. It's never going to be okay to commit adultery. On and on and on. There are things in the Torah that will never change, that are called Torah. Right? These are instructions, and they're not going to change. Akin to those are things that are called chukot. And chukot is one of those interesting Hebrew words. Chukot sounds feminine, but it's actually from chok, a masculine noun. And it means a statute. So a Torah might say, you have to give a sin offering, but it doesn't explain how. The statute explains how. Now, let's say a statute becomes something that really isn't beneficial anymore. An example, the daughters of Zelophehad, come to Moses and they say it's not fair. The Torah says Israel inherits. Hey, Israel inherits. And then the chukah is only men inherit. So they come to Moses and they say, this is not fair. Your friend is here again. Good. Hi. So that wasn't good. So Moses goes to God, and God issues a mishpat. And what is a mishpat? Right? It's from shafat, to judge. He issues a judgment. I'm trying to explain. First of all, we talked about the age limit for priesthood and how that was changed by David. And the question is, how does he have a right to change it? He has a right to change it because there's levels of law. The Torah is something that's not going to be changed. The chukah is how you do something. But if that something becomes out of date, it requires something else, then you find a mishpat, an adjudication that changes the chukah, that changes the statute to mean more of what the Torah intended. You see? If I find a better way of doing something, then I issue a change of orders. Do it this way. We have light. If we had the money to change this, I would change all of this to LEDs. Okay? So, of course, that's a mundane thing. I give an adjudication that changes the way that we have lighting, and it brings it more into what? What the Torah, the intent of the instruction is, have the best light and the cheapest light that you can, that endures for a long period of time. Okay? Now, these laws can have to do with people, and it can have to do with objects. Now, why do we allow women to wear pants when the Bible says that a woman should not wear a man's clothes? Because times have changed, and there's women pants. And it doesn't make them men, right? In the old days, there was a problem, right, in gender confusion. And in fact, much of it was purposeful, right? So in order to avoid that, you avoided mixing the clothes. So what do we do in a modern time? We issue a mishpat, an adjudication, that changes the chukah and allows women to dress a certain way that doesn't violate the intention of keeping women women and men men. Okay? So we do this all the time. One of the curious portions, take a look at Exodus 38:8. First, turn to Numbers 27, verses 1 through 11. Let's read that. Numbers 27, verses 1 through 11, and then we're going to go to Exodus 38:8. Okay, could somebody read the 11 verses for me? Numbers 27, 1 through 11.
The number of the Bnei Israel, heads of clans, officers of thousands and hundreds, and their officers who served the king in all matters
Was that Numbers 27, 1 through 11?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm
Huh?
sorry.
I didn't think it was. I couldn't I was hoping I would recognize something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But okay, so you read the order of the leaders and their troops and whatnot, but we need to read about the entrance of the tent of meeting is what we're,
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
it's okay. So would somebody else take that charge, or?
That's 27, 1 through 11?
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry if I don't develop.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
it's okay.
Chronicles.
One day, a petition was presented by
Yeah.
the daughters of Sava Women, Mala, Noah, Hagla, Milcah, and Tisra. Their father, Zelophehad, was a descendant of Helper son of Gilead, was a descendant of Hefer, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph. And these women stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, the tribal leaders, and the entire community at the entrance of the tabernacle. Our father died in the wilderness, they said. He was not among Korah's followers who rebelled against the Lord. He died because of his own sin, but he had no sons. Why should the name of our father disappear from his clan just because he had no sons? Give us property along with the rest of our relatives. So Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord replied to Moses, the claim of the daughters of Zelophehad is legitimate. You must give them a grant of land along with their father's relatives, assign them the property that would have been given to their father, and give the following instructions to the people of Israel. If a man dies and has no son, then give his inheritance to his daughters. And if he had no daughter, either transfer his inheritance to his brothers. If he had no brothers, give his inheritance to his father's brothers. But if his father has no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan. This is a legal requirement for the people of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses.
All right, so there you have it, okay? Moses doesn't know what to do because it's a long-standing tradition, and that the tribes had clan leaders, and that the males in those tribes were the inheritors. Now the law's changed. Later on, the daughters of Zelophehad are commanded, you can only marry within your own tribe. Okay? We got to keep the tribal integrity. But the thing that is intriguing is that they have a place at the tent of meeting. That's very curious. We don't see that very much. And 2 verses, when women are there at the tent of meeting, 2 verses give us pause for what their function was, because the daughters of Zelophehad were special women. Let's take a look. Exodus 38, verse 8. This is about Bezalel.
Okay.
So it's Bezalel made the bronze basin and its stand from the bronze mirrors of the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Women served at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
Yeah.
And they had mirrors, bronze mirrors.
Oh, wow.
All right? So keep in mind, what is this bronze basin?
Outside of the temple, is that?
It's for washing.
Yeah.
It's the what?
It's for washing. It's for ritual
Oh, yeah.
purity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So this was what was so terrible regarding Eli's son. Remember in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 22, we actually talked about that some time ago. Eli heard everything his sons were doing to all Israel and how they were sleeping with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Those women were supposed to be virgins. And Eli's sons took that away from them, right? Polluted that entire thing. So we know about the women. We don't know a whole lot about their service, but Eli's sons took advantage of them, right? Now, let's talk about the 2/10 of meeting, okay? Scholars are not in total agreement whether it's 1/10 of meeting or 2/10 of meeting, but let's take a look at Exodus chapter 33, verses 7 through 11. So we read of a tent that Moses built in the desert outside of the Israelite camp. And this is the place. You see it? Exodus 33, verses 7 through 11. Just for somebody who inquired, we are at 7130 Granby Street in Norfolk, on the corner of Thole and Granby. Yeah, you can.
Now Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. So it happened everyone who saw Adonai would go out of the tent of meeting, who was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, everyone at the door of his own tent, and look after Moses until he had gone into the tent. After Moses entered, the pillar of cloud descended, stood at the door, and he would speak with Moses.
So initially, the women, whatever they were doing with mirrors, were there at the tent of Moses.
Okay.
Now along comes the tabernacle, which we don't know if it's an enlarged tent of Moses. We don't think so, because we have very specific instructions of how that tent looked, and it was much larger than Moses' tent would be, right? And had sections to it. And so in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verse 3 and chapter 2 verse 14, we eventually see the tabernacle, not Moses' tent, but the tabernacle rest at Shiloh, right?
Okay.
So the women mentioned in Exodus and the women mentioned in 1 Samuel appear to have served at the entrance of both tents. Okay. So it seems that they have a function, and there's a succession of women who are virgins, right, that serve at the tabernacle and at the tent of Moses. When the tent of Moses is gone, only the tabernacle exists. So then the question is, the women mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 2 verse 22, some people think they were, this is ridiculous of course, that they would be cultic prostitutes. There were such things in Canaan, in Mesopotamia, and so forth, but not in Israel. This was not an Israelite practice. That's clear from the Ten Commandments and from the laws that ensue, the laws of purity. And certainly that would have to be true for the priests that would be coming in and out. It's not a possibility. Yeah.
Eli's sons took advantage? Was
Yes.
it Eli's sons?
Yeah. Okay. So Eli, if you read 1 Samuel 2:25, Eli regards what his sons did as a sin against the Lord. It means that the women were dedicated to the Lord. Okay? Now that's kind of interesting. The word that describes them is Sava. Weird word. These are the Sava women. Do you know what Sava means? It means to wage war. Adonai Tsavaot, the Lord of hosts. So these women,
How do you spell that?
Tzavat, T-Z-V-A-H, or T-S-V-A-H. So think about this. These women are serving the Lord of hosts. Okay, directly. And then the question is, how are they serving the Lord of hosts? I mean, that's a pretty high position. Look, Ray. Let's go. Okay, so the women are involved in some kind of a ministry that is comparable to the Levites, but they're mentioned so few times, and very little is mentioned. We have to guess. Why are the women there, and why do they have mirrors, bronze mirrors? Okay, it's not going to be that difficult.
So they can look in the back and see what's going on without turning their face to the Lord.
Okay, all right, it's a possibility. It's not explicit. All right.
I guess I got that from Medusa. Couldn't look at Medusa directly, but, she was supposed to be a god.
Yeah, and as she turns people to stone. I got it. All right, so in Numbers 4:23 and Numbers 8:24, the Sava women are there to serve, right? Just like the Levites are called Sava.
Okay.
They're the Sava men, and these women are the Sava women. It's not studied that much. It's glossed over because it's such a little thing. But it becomes very, very important. And it also serves as a paradigm that women have, maybe not in this role as we will discover, but women have a role in the service of the body of the Messiah. Isn't it obvious? Right? We have to determine what those things are. So, Sava, a guard can be at Sava, one serving in the army. Right? An army guard, a Levitical guard. The women are there as a guard for something. And so the question is, whatever is it? All right, so healthy men from the tribe of Levi are dedicated to the priestly service. We also know that non-Levites worked in the tabernacle as well. According to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1, Samuel was not a Levite. Samuel was from what tribe? Ephraim. How does he get to be in the temple? Okay, so Levites could serve and non-Levites could serve. We always get in a panic that there is a priesthood according to the order of Melchizedek. Why? We have lots of paradigms of non-Levites doing priestly service. Okay? So it doesn't have to be a Levite. And the women don't have to be Levites either, right? So the men are called Sava, the women are called Sava. Both are dedicated to the service of the tabernacle. We also see Samuel is what? 1 Samuel chapter 3, Samuel is a Nazirite. So as a Nazirite, he is allowed in the temple, right? To do priestly service, to judge Israel, right? So these women are dedicated in some way, probably by their parents, to the service of God. Remember Jephthah?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened there? He vowed a vow unto the Lord. What, she's going out now? He vowed a vow to the Lord. Whatever comes out of my house is yours. Only give me the victory for the battle. And who comes out but his daughter? And instead of saying, we would say, why couldn't he change his mind? He couldn't change his mind because he thought somebody would bring something out, something of value, right? And that would be consecrated, a korban, dedicated to the Lord. Out comes his daughter, and she becomes one of these dedicated women. Probably she wasn't too happy about it. She hadn't wanted it, and her parents really didn't ordain this. But according to his vow of consecration, she had to serve as a tzava. Okay, and then what again would that be? So Jephthah's daughter. That's in Judges chapter 11, and I'm sure you know the story. So if Jephthah's daughter is an example of a young woman that's dedicated to the Lord, her story indicates what? That there were women who were dedicated to the tabernacle that served as consecrated virgins their whole life, probably, right? And I suspect it's, I suppose it's like a woman going to be a nun in the service of God. There came a time in the body of the Messiah that women wanted to serve in very important roles, and this was created for them. Good or bad, it was created for them. We do have the paradigm in the tabernacle. So again, what is it? David, of course, changes things around. Back to the mirrors. Exodus 38. Now, mirrors were used for some ritual purpose in ancient times in many cultures. Okay, we find archaeological effects of women's mirrors in excavations of sacred sites. So it's not like it was not unknown. And then the question is, what is it? So the Egyptian word for mirror is ankh. Yeah. You know that symbol? Okay, the Egyptian word for mirror is ankh.
How do you spell that?
A-N-K-H. But guess what? It's also the word for it. Same word. Means life. Okay? So we're starting to paint a picture here. There's something about life, and there's something about the mirror. We have to blend those meanings somehow. Okay? We have to blend it. Well, okay, we got women serving at the entrance. Okay? They are serving as Sava, as a guard. For whom? The mirrors in the Egyptian language is life and mirror, right? Then later, Bezalel takes these mirrors and makes the wash basin for ritual purity for the people working in the tabernacle. Oh, wait. I think we can start making some connections before they start the music. They haven't started yet, all right? In Numbers chapter 16, verse 40, do you remember that the priesthood is described as having the what? They are to offer the incense. And what is the incense on? Plates, right? So mirrors, okay. So mirrors, ritual purity, life, women as guards, right? Later on, those same mirrors are used for ritual purity, for washing, right? The altar in Exodus chapter 40, verse 29, the altar of burnt offerings where the priests made their animal sacrifices was positioned where? At the entrance of the tent of meeting. So the entrance of the tent of meeting is where adjudications take place. Political issues are discussed. Religious issues are discussed. Issues of ritual purity. Making sure that the priesthood is pure before they enter in. So think about that. What was the punishment for Miriam?
Did she get like leprosy?
So what could she not do?
Go outside?
She could not serve within the camp. She could not serve at the tent of meeting. She was punished by being put out the camp. Okay? So what happens to a woman once a month? What happens when a woman has a child? When can she be entered back to worship. After the flow stops. Who's going to examine that? A male priest? A woman. A woman doing sacred duty is going to use a mirror to see if the flow has stopped. In order for the priesthood to declare her clean, yes, you can enter back into the... Who would have guessed? And that's why those same mirrors are used for ritual...
That's why they call it life.
Yes.
Because that is life.
Yes.
When it has menstruation,
Yes.
it gives life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So these women, these Sava women, are very important to the cultic purity of Israel. It's not the priests. That would be horrible for the priests to examine. It's very logical that the woman would examine. Just like in the body of the Messiah, sometimes it's very inappropriate for a man to counsel a woman under certain circumstances, but it would be very appropriate for a woman to counsel a woman, right? Or to do some ministry, or to go into a women's prison, or to minister a Bible study to women, and so forth and so on. What I'm saying is, we began this by saying that David changed the way that we did the Torah by changing the statute. And there was no problem, right? The age of the priests was from 25 to 50. David said, now, we need more men. It's going to be 20 to 50. If a man is eligible for military service at age 20, he should be eligible for the priesthood at age 20. The 50-year-old guys, let's bring them back from the physical labor. They didn't live like we live. 70 years old was considered an old age, right? 70 years, if by strength 80 years, So if those things were changed, then the administration of the way in which Israel, and then later the body of Messiah, does things can change. We can change things to make it more commensurate to what? To everybody being able to serve. Everybody being able to see what their place is, right? So we take a broader view of women, or whoever it might be, right? Does this make sense? Does my point make sense? I mean, it's an interesting topic because it's not studied much, it's not understood, but I think we've come to the truth of what the text means. But the greater truth is people don't like change, but change inevitably must come. If we had 500 people in the congregation, I can guarantee you we'd have to function differently. Right? Yeah.
I was just gonna, say that even in not getting a job for a time, even including for the women to serve in a priestly manner, but in the realm of helping women in a way that's comfortable for women.
Yes. Correct.
We're
And-
part of the ministry.
And a lot of this stuff is common sense, but it seems like in modern times, people have lost the good of the common sense, going wacko. We have to bring that back and partner with God with a renewed mind. And a renewed mind has common sense in it, okay? It's not that we're going to rationalize everything and think everything through for ourselves, but, God's not going to tell me probably, Rabbi, you have to go up and you have to be the one playing the piano today. Well, I don't know how to play the piano. Okay? So that's probably not going to happen. Okay? Final comments or question? Sometimes these little issues have large ramifications. Right? No questions? Okay. Thank you, God, for your word, the richness of it, the way in which you put everything in order, the way in which you had deference to men and women equally. And there was no there was no prejudice against one or the other. We bless you for that, oh God, and we bless you for the day and how you're going to enliven us, how you're going to transform us into how you look and how you look at things today because of what you've done through the blood of the Messiah, making us a new creation, Lord God. We're going to every day learn to live like that new creation. Thank you in Yeshua's name. thank you for joining us, and let's see. Okay, so see. Okay. One of you is asking about a Messianic Congregation, and we have a service today at 10:30 and a Bible study at 7 on Wednesday evening, and you're welcome to come to those things. Torah study at 9:30 in the morning on Saturdays. Okay. All right, see you at 10:30.